Say number.
My agenda up. Make a motion to call to order the Tuesday, March 15th special meeting of the town board for the purpose of having a discussion and presentation about the possible adoption of a CEA critical environmental area down in Xena. I'm going to start first with a quick resolution. Be it resolved to adopt the attached memorandum of understanding regarding the town of Woodstock Highway Department wages for the year 2022. Do you have a second from a board member?
Second.
Is that Bennett?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Reggie?
Yeah, aye.
You good? And Maria-Elena? You good?
Yep.
Okay.
Aye. Yeah, I heard a hand. I saw a hand. I saw her hand.
Okay, so with that, I am going to ask, where's Alex?
Hi.
Hello, Alex.
Hi.
I'll let you and Gretchen, are you going to start the presentation?
Are you ready? I have to screen on.
Okay, so while we're waiting, what I'm going to do is there'll be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentation. And what I would do is if you in the chat, just send us your names. Ashley will keep a list of that and we'll let folks ask their question in that order.
Okay.
And I'm
Got
going to ask
that?
everybody but Alex and Gretchen to mute.
All right, Bill, you all set?
I'm ready to go. You all set?
Okay. Yep.
Roll it.
All right. Thanks, guys. So good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us for this information session about the proposed Xena Woods CEA. Bill, especially thank you to you and to the board for hosting us.
Sure.
We really appreciate it.
Our
So my
pleasure.
name is Alex Bolato.
I want to listen, so
Oh.
you're welcome to give it a try. I sent it to you and you have to put in the passcode.
Guys, I'm hearing.
Whoever's speaking,
That was
everybody
coming.
but Alex needs to
Sorry,
mute.
guys. Okay, so I am the chair of the Woodstock Environmental Commission, and I'm also a member of the CEA working group. And this is our proposal for the Xena Woods Critical Environmental Area. It was created by the Woodstock Environmental Commission and the CEA working group, which consists of members representing the WEC, the Planning Board, the Town Board, and the Woodstock Land Conservancy. So like Bill said, we'll do a short presentation and then Gretchen Stevens from Hudsonia and Ingrid Heckel, I believe she's here tonight, from the Hudson River Estuary Program, along with myself and the other group members, will be able to answer any questions you have at the end. So in 2020, the WEC assisted in the completion of a natural resources inventory along with the DEC Hudson River Estuary Program and Cornell University, the Ashokan Watershed Stream Management Program, Cornell Cooperative Extension of Ulster County, and the Ulster County Department of the Environment. So the NRI cataloged the wealth of natural resources and green infrastructure in the town of Woodstock using mapping data from the 2012 Hudsonia Habitat Mapping Project. And that all came from information from aerial photography, USGS maps, GIS data, and they did a lot of extensive field verification, which involved like physically going out and walking as much of the land in Woodstock as possible to confirm whether or not the expected ecological features were present. So once the NRI was completed, and there you can see it for yourselves, it's available on the Town of Woodstock website. There's the link here. So the next question was how to utilize the information it provided. And one way to do this was to consider designation of one or more critical environmental areas in Woodstock. So in early 2021, the planning board began to look into CEA designations as a tool for them to use to help guide responsible development, particularly given the unprecedented development we've been seeing in the past couple of years. So the planning board asked us at the WEC to take over the project, and we formed a CEA working group. We applied on behalf of the town of Woodstock and we won a fully funded program of CEA technical assistance and training from Hudsonia and the Hudson River Estuary program of the New York State DEC. So we use tools like the NRI, the Habitat Mapping Project, the Climate Resiliency Planning Tool, and the 2018 Comprehensive Plan to guide our investigation. And we ended up identifying the Xena Woods area for CEA designation. Then we kind of embarked on this series of presentations and educational outreach about the proposed CEA, as well as ongoing stakeholder dialogue. So you might be wondering, like, what exactly is a critical environmental area? So it's a geographic area that has exceptional or unique environmental characteristics. Those could include fish and wildlife habitat, forest or vegetation, open space, spaces that benefit human health, and areas of important aesthetic or scenic quality. And New York state law authorizes municipalities to designate CEAs within their boundaries to bring awareness to places that deserve special attention in the course of land use planning, regulatory reviews of certain development projects, and decisions about development and conservation. And Woodstock has gone through this once in the past. In 1993, the town adopted as a CEA all state designated freshwater wetlands. So utilizing our prior work on the NRI and our other mapping tools, the group narrowed down the CEA options to what we are calling the Xena Woods CEA. So the blue shaded area in this map shows the proposed area. It encompasses the large forests to the east of John Joy Road and Xena Road, and includes parts of the Bluestone Wild Forest. These are the largest lowland forest areas in the town, and they're part of a much larger forest which extends north, south, and east into the towns of Saugerties, Ulster, and beyond. So the total area of the proposed CEA is approximately 2,290 acres, which is about 3.5 square miles. Most of the land is in private ownership. The exceptions are the Bluestone Wild Forest, which is owned by the DEC. There are 3 adjacent parcels owned by the town of Woodstock, and the land that surrounds the Kingston Reservoirs, which is owned by the city of Kingston. And, you know, we're very lucky here in Woodstock. We have a lot of areas that have a lot of ecological importance. But as a group, we recognized that so many of the areas in the higher elevations already have a lot of protection, or just their natural features don't lend themselves to a lot of development. And we also recognized that the western half of the town already has greater protections because of the presence of the DEP. And that in reviewing all of the NRI maps, the Xena Woods area emerged as an exceptional confluence of large interconnected forests, wetlands, high biodiversity, and features that promote climate resilience, while also being particularly vulnerable to fragmentation from development. So the designation is in recognition of the importance of this area for ecological services to the human community, valuable habitats for wildlife and plants, and support of local ecosystems. So the proposed CEA would further the town goals that were set forth in the comprehensive plan. Those were strengthening protections for natural resources, reducing habitat fragmentation, and promoting conservation of lands and water for climate resilience. The Xena Woods area is particularly rich in core forests, in shrublands, meadows, forested swamps, vernal pools, small streams, and other wetlands, and it also contains a portion of the Sawkill River. So some of the benefits that it offers to humans. So intact forests promote the infiltration of precipitation, so that's like your rain, your snow, things like that, into the soil, and maybe the best insurance for maintaining groundwater quality and quantity, and for reducing rapid runoff and soil erosion. The forests also help to protect the quality and quantity of water that feed the unconsolidated aquifer that underlies this part of town. A lot of our drinking water comes from there. So forested watersheds and floodplains help to absorb and dampen flood flows, which aid in flood resiliency for local and downstream areas. Carbon storage, forests are great repositories of stored carbon in the vegetation, the organic duff on the forest floor, and the soils. They also absorb air pollution and help to moderate local air temperatures, which are services of increasing importance as the climate warms. And they also offer scenic views and recreation. So these forests are an important component of Woodstock's scenic landscapes. They provide a destination and haven for recreation and rest for locals and tourists alike, and are a draw for tourism dollars to our area. The forests also provide important habitat for plants and wildlife. So in the Xena Woods area, you can find turtles, snakes, salamanders, bats, songbirds, raptors, large and small mammals, and also invertebrates. The Xena Woods area is an important north-south corridor, which could serve as a conduit for animals and plants to migrate northwards as the climate warms. And the proposed CEA also contains nearly 2 miles of the Saltkill River, which, along with many of the smaller tributaries present, are classified New York State DEC trout streams. And forests that border streams help to keep the streams cool, supply them with organic structural material for the aquatic food web. And the forests of the Xena Woods help to protect the water quality, water volumes, and habitat quality of the Saltkill. And they also provide a forested corridor for over 8,000 feet of the stream where it winds through otherwise unprotected land. So what do some of those things look like? We're going to show a couple of maps. So these are the core forests that are present in the area. Those are interior forest areas surrounded by at least a 100-meter wide buffer of edge forest habitat. These interior forest areas support a unique array of plants and animals that are easily disturbed by human activity. They're also very high quality forests. So this shows the NRI Forest Condition Index tool is something that the state uses to judge the quality of forests. Most of the forest in this area is in the top 5 or 10%. These are the wetlands and streams that are present. This is the habitat quality. You can see it's generally very high in the Xena Woods area. And as you can see here, this kind of gray shaded.
Can you go back to that habitat map for 1 second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Can you go back to one before that?
Sure. Sorry if I'm going too fast, guys.
I'm taking photos, that's why.
Okay. And we can provide you with any of these as well if anyone needs them afterwards. So feel free.
Actually,
to reach
maybe
out.
we could put this presentation up on the website tomorrow.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And this gray area on this map is, you can see it's the unconsolidated aquifer and where it runs underneath this area. And just to put everything sort of into a bigger context, you know, I think it's undeniable to most of us that we will be facing increasingly severe impacts of climate breakdown in the coming years. And we've seen some of that already here, like events like Hurricane Irene, the recent ice storm that we experienced that left so many people without power or heat on some of the coldest days. So the plans that we're making now are going to have lasting, really important effects on future generations. And what we're also trying to do is we're maximizing the natural resources that can help protect us from a lot of these threats, and in particular our forests and our wetlands. And that's going to be imperative to our future survival. So now that we've talked about the specific area, you guys might be asking, like, how does this affect me as a landowner? So the activities of most landowners are not affected. Things like building a house, building a garage, a minor accessory structure, doing your landscaping. It's subdivisions and larger projects which are subject to planning board review and already go through the state environmental quality review, or seeker, it's known as. They will require consideration of potential impacts to the CEA. So what would this look like in terms of a planning board review? So consideration of CEAs only applies to type 1 or unlisted actions under seeker. So type 2 actions like construction of a single family house, they're not subject to review. So when you fill out, if you're going through this process, you'll fill out your environmental assessment forms and you'll have to identify whether the building or whatever action you're taking is within or adjacent to a CEA. And if so, the lead agency, which is usually the planning board, will have to identify and evaluate the magnitude of potential adverse impacts to the specific qualities of that CEA. And if they find that there might be moderate or large impacts, they will then try to see if they can be avoided or substantially mitigated. So one of the things that's really important to note is that CEA designation does not affect the classification of actions under seeker. So it won't change something that's an unlisted action to a type 1 action or anything else. Likewise, the actions within a CEA do not automatically trigger a declaration of a positive impact, and they do not automatically require preparation of an environmental impact statement. So a CEA designation does not restrict or regulate land use, but rather helps alert landowners, developers, and the planning board upfront that they are working in an area with sensitive environmental resources so that they can work together to site their development projects in a way that avoids or minimizes impacts to the most sensitive areas and maintains the overall integrity of the CEA. So some of the ways that landowners can minimize their impacts in the CEA are things like minimize disturbances, follow best practices for timber harvests, avoid or minimize forest fragmentation, maintain connectivity with forests outside the borders of the CEA, keep vernal pools, wetlands, and small streams intact, as well as the connections between the wetlands. You're going to want to design your developments to accommodate storms of 500-year intensity in anticipation of more severe storms in the coming years. And with that in mind, you don't want to obstruct or concentrate flood flows. So what that could possibly look like, these are some examples. Recommendations might include clustering homes, minimizing new road construction, or adjusting the configuration of lots to avoid sensitive areas. And this example here, this is from Rensselaer, but it can apply pretty much anywhere. You can see on the left, this is a property within a CEA that has, these are the features that they highlighted. The middle illustration is what some sort of conventional development might look like. And then the far right illustration is what's known as a conservation subdivision, which is one way that you can protect some of the features of a CEA, or really of any property. You're seeing like clustered houses, you're seeing fewer roads, things like that. And so what are the benefits of doing something like this? So CEA designation alerts landowners, developers, and regulatory agencies to the features of importance or concern contained within a CEA. It's going to ensure that these unique environmental areas are given appropriate consideration during the project design and planning stages and during the seeker process. It will provide information early on in the development process, which can streamline reviews and can help to avoid and reduce impacts to the important ecological features. It will educate and advise on best practices, and it will support and promote conservation-based development strategies that keep the big picture in mind. So those are things like habitat connectivity, watershed protection, things that might be bigger than just your specific lot, but have to do with the overall quality of the area. And it's another tool to help Woodstock meet its conservation and climate goals as set forth in the comprehensive plan. So CEAs do not legally preserve land. They do not affect construction of a single family dwelling on an approved lot. They do not restrict or prohibit development. They do not require that any development be considered a seeker type 1 action. And they do not require the preparation of an environmental impact statement. So the next steps, the legal next steps would be to have a formal public hearing. Then this would go through the seeker process with the state. At that point, the town board will take a vote. And if they decide that they want to vote to adopt this as a CEA, it would get filed with the DEC, and then it would be in effect after 30 days after that. So thank you guys so much for joining and listening tonight. Again, I've said it a few times, but we're so lucky in this area to be surrounded by this like rich ecological resources. We have a lot of biodiversity, but we're also in an area where those resources and that biodiversity is threatened by irresponsible development. So, you know, the work that we are doing now, and by we, I mean like people like the Woodstock Land Conservancy, the steps the town board takes every day, the planning board takes every day, you know, the WEC, all of these types of projects. The housing task force is working on stuff like this. These are just like small but really important pieces of a bigger picture of a worldwide effort to protect all of these really important resources. And so if anyone is interested in finding out more about CEAs, these are just some links you can check out. The top ones are sort of more general information, and the bottom few are pertaining to this particular area. So, and we can share these too. So, but if anyone wants to take a look, and that is it. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Alex.
Stop sharing
So
my.
I didn't want to interrupt when you were on a roll there, but you said something about a majority or a portion, big portion of drinking water comes from this. Well, I tuned out, I think, when you said that.
Okay, it was just one of the, you know, so the aquifer underlies a large area here.
So you weren't talking about the town aquifer.
The unconsolidated aquifer of the town is under a large, I mean, you can see there's some to the west here as well. It's this gray area.
Well, I think the point there, though, is that this is not the aquifer that feeds the town water district water,
Right.
but this is an aquifer that will feed a lot of properties in the area. So, you know, water is always good to preserve and keep clean.
Sorry,
So,
is that, yeah. So, I mean, this is where people are getting some of their drinking water from.
Okay.
And these are the links. And okay, I think, oh, all right.
Okay, so
Okay,
I'm
that's
going
what I
to
got
first
for you
go out
guys.
to the town board quickly and see if any town board members, or should I go to the public?
I just have,
well, I'll
Go ahead,
Go
go.
ahead, Reggie.
Okay, Reggie first.
just quickly, thank you, Alex, for a great presentation. Quick question, when you talked about next steps, from the hearing to the seeker, what is that window of time before it would come to the town board? Just rough, is there an approximate like idea of a timeline? Is it a couple of months? Is it longer?
Well, the seeker can be done at any time, Reggie, and that can be done before the public hearing. And the
Okay.
last meeting we had, we did talk about having a public hearing in June.
So basically, everything's ready to go as far as the hearing. You all are ready to do that.
Yes, the hearing would be the immediate next step. I mean, I think Gretchen probably can speak to the process maybe a little bit better than I can because she's done it so many times.
Okay.
And then it would really be up to you guys how quickly you wanted to move it along. So.
Okay, thank you.
Laura,
Yes. Well, so first of all, Alex, fabulous presentation. And I saw the sneak preview and it's gotten even better since then. So totally fabulous presentation and fabulous job covering it. And I also want to say, I think you covered, of all the questions that I heard, that is the reason we're having this presentation, I heard the answers in your presentation. So great job covering so many things that people were asking about. So yay. And I'm looking forward to June. I still think June is the right time frame because I know, as I've said before, environment is critical, housing is critical, and this is environmental and land use, and the Housing Oversight Task Force is environmental and land use, and marrying them together, I think, is the right way to go. I don't see any issue as we get to that point. I think in June, I see us moving along, cruising along really well, because I think you've answered a lot of questions here. I still think marrying those two things together makes sense because they are both critical, they're both land use, they're both environmental, but wonderful presentation, and thank you.
Bennett or Maria-Elena?
I can just add a thank you very much for a very thoughtful presentation. You did a lot of hard work there, you and the rest of the group. So thank you very much.
Okay. And Bennett?
I just wanted to say to the CEA team, I've been working just since getting on the board to try to, help move this along. And I think you have done such an amazing job to all of the members of the CEA team. Thank you for this terrific presentation and for this great work. And to know that it comes from the comprehensive plan, to know that it has been informed by the natural resources inventory, and to see the steps that you've taken. I think it's just very affirming. I'm glad to know as well that this came from originally a planning board discussion about how to protect more of Woodstock with greater tools. So just thank you very much for that. The only question that I have is, can you explain what is the public hearing process? This is not a public hearing. This is a presentation. What happens in a public hearing?
That's a good question. It will be my first public hearing that I will be attending as a presenter. I don't, if someone else might know better, but the difference between what this would be in a public hearing, although in practice it will not be super different, is that a public hearing has to be announced to the public through, it'll go into the newspaper. We'll have to send out notifications, and the public will be able to come and bring their comments. And then I think what they have to say will inform you guys as the town board about how you want to proceed and how you feel the project has been received. So it won't be totally different. We'll probably do a little bit of a presentation and then hear from folks in the community.
Thank you.
Alex is pretty much spot on there. There are notification requirements, and the public has an absolute right to speak. Here, it's not a guarantee, although we're here to listen to what the public has to say. It's not going to be very much different. So with that, I'm going to move off to the public, and the first speaker up, Jeff Delicio.
Great, thanks a lot. That was a really good presentation. By the way, my property, I happen to be one of the larger property holders in Xena. And I'd just like to ask, how many of the town board members own property in Xena within this CEA, potential CEA?
Not I.
Okay, so the second question would be, why would the people that are impacted the most, being the property owners, not have gotten notice? The state does recommend that you send notice and have a conversation with the property owners prior to moving along as far as you have, because it does impact the folks that own property. I own 95 acres, and I was very happy to have Hudsonia come in 2007 and take a look at it. I went back to the Hudsonia report and then shared that report with some of my alumni at Cornell, a forester, a biologist, a environmental lawyer, and a property lawyer, real estate lawyer. And the question they all had is, why, with less than 200 CEAs and strong zoning laws already in Woodstock, would we have to put a CEA in place? Because the things that came up with this and reviewing the reports are not that unique to all the property in Xena, including the properties where they're developed. So my question is, why would we have to have additional restrictions? And they're not restrictions, but it's a wide open slate for any one of those elements in the CEA to stop somebody's development or enjoyment of the property. And by the way, you already stated that most of that property is private, which is not what most of the CEAs are in New York, because there's less than 200 in New York, by the way. So it's not like a very common practice. So if that's the case, I had development adjacent to mine, a 42-acre parcel that in the past several years had been subdivided into 6 lots, and had a seeker, did all the different things, went with those suggestions that were in there to make it more ecologically feasible, and cost a hell of a lot of money to do. a ton of money. So why would a CEA need to be put on top of what's already there?
Jeff, thank you. That's a good question. And, I think in terms of outreach, part of the issue that we've run into, no, issue is not the right word, because we've been sort of doing as much as we have been able to. Without the date set of a public hearing, it was difficult to know when we should be telling people to come to get more information. And I think that was definitely an oversight on our part, and a bit of a confusion that we obviously apologize for. But being able to do something like this and then going into a public hearing, we certainly are planning to talk to as many people as we can. I mean, at the end of the day, the CEA is really an educational tool. So it's a tool that alerts someone like the planning board to the specific features in the area. So it's not going to stop development. It doesn't have the legal grounds to do anything like that. It will let people know what specifically is there, why it's important, and give them a heads up to take it into consideration. It's, hopefully it can work in tandem with other zoning that exists and that may come in the future. So,
Alex,
yeah.
sorry. But I was going to say, I don't know if you wanted to speak to, I know the planning board asked for the CEA. So one of the reasons why the group did the CEA, why the team did the CEA, was because the planning board wanted, I don't want to speak for the planning board, but I'm believing that they wanted additional information. So as they review property cases in that area, that they would have some more information and be able to ask better questions and have better understanding. So it wasn't just some group off the side, as you said before, it wasn't just some group off to the side, oh, let's just pop out a CEA. The planning board did ask for that to help them with their guidance. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about that, but that's my understanding of where it originated and part of why it's happening.
Yep, that's a
It's
good
good.
point. It looks like Judith maybe wants to add something to that as a planning board member.
Yeah, we have turnover. We have turnover on planning boards. We have turnover on town board. And in a lot of ways, I have seen evidence of a problem with institutional memory. The creation of a CEA puts it on the ground that 20 years from now, members of the planning board who may still be in diapers for all I know that they need to pay attention in the same way that we know now. It keeps a focus in an area that really deserves the focus.
Well, that's great, but I'm looking at the practical world. In the practical world, what you're going to do is you're going to exasperate your housing issue because, I've got 4 lots down there. And as opposed to putting a couple houses on each lot or even developing some affordable housing down there, it's going to all go to the highest bidder, the folks with the most money. The folks are going to put 1 house per lot, which they can do without even a seeker. It's going to keep it private. It'll never be public. Most of the land you talked about is private. So the whole recreational concept is zero because nobody's going to have people hiking through their backyard. So what you're actually doing is you're telling me that the best way to develop that property is to have millionaire after millionaire move in, put large houses, put big fences around it, and make the property even more private than it is today. I mean, that's what it forces because it's extremely expensive to develop property in the town of Woodstock already. And if you take a look at some of the large property holders, and there are several of us down in Xena, the cost to the town in mitigation to get development done, and I'm not talking about tract housing or Indian casinos or any of that ridiculous stuff that everybody threatens with. It's going to put a burden on the town where the town should be looking at how do we create affordable housing and not spend $1 million on litigation because there are some deep pockets and big properties down in Xena. And all this does is create more minutia for us. And I'm not looking, I'm 5th generation Woodstock. And I know about lacking memory in boards. I sit on I'm one of the fire commissioners. And from group to group, it does change. I'm just saying it does not need to be in the form of a CEA, which creates more challenges for development. And that's my point.
Yeah, Jeff, if I may say, I know you've seen Alex's presentation. I don't know whether you've gone onto the town website and read the CEA. If you do read the CEA, it has just a page and a half of guidelines. It's a page and a half, and they're common sense. If I read them, I think they're
You
common
know what,
sense.
Laura? Well, I'm gonna stop the back and forth and because
Okay.
I know there's 6 or 7 people that want to speak at this point,
Sure. Okay.
and then we can go. So Jeff,
Thanks, Bill.
did you have any more, or you can?
I'll let everybody else speak. I've got pages of them, and I got probably another 20 pages I'll send to the board.
Okay, thank you. And if you want to put your name in the chat again, if you want to come back. Jeff Collins?
Interesting. So we followed Jeff with another Jeff and another Cornell
Jeffs.
graduate Jeff. 2 Jeffs. Also another large landowner in the Xenia area. So I have some very specific questions. My wife and I own the land where the Sudbury School is on. To develop the Sudbury School, we had to go through a process that was very complete. We had to go through the planning board. We had to map all of the resources that we were affecting. We had to basically make sure that everything that the planning board looked at and thought should be done was done. That process to me is very complete and very complete development, and ensured that we did everything exactly correctly. So my question to you is, how would that have been different if the CEA had been in place? That's one question. I don't want the answer now. I want it actually written out so we can look at it and understand what it means to have a CEA versus not having a CEA. Second question, if the Sudbury School decides to build a soccer field in there, what happens? Can they do that? What's the process they have to go through if there's a CEA versus if there's not a CEA? Because I want to understand the difference, because it doesn't really make sense to me that you say it's advisory, but then how does it actually impact the development? Third question, Sudbury School wants to add a new building. So 5,000 square foot building. What's the process for that? How is it different with a CEA versus without the CEA in detail? And then this is actually a question that applies really to Jeff Delicio's. I know his land's for sale. It's just north of my land. If someone wanted to buy that and build a subdivision of, affordable housing, how does that work? What's the process for that? How does it differ with a CEA versus without a CEA? So these first questions are like, what's the practical impact on someone using the land with a CEA versus not with a CEA? I don't understand that. It's not been clearly identified. I'd love it to be clearly identified so that we know what's going to happen. Next thing is, I have a consultant that has said that a CEA will mean that uses become type 1 action under seeker. So I don't know. I mean, you say it doesn't. I have consultants to say it does. And that's a consultant that's a professional in land use. I'd like to actually get that really clear, because I thought it didn't either based on your documentation, but I have someone saying it does. Next thing is a point that I wanted to make. I'm on Housing Oversight Task Force. We're looking at developing, being able to get more housing, more affordable housing in Woodstock. And we want to do that with basically a conservation subdivision. So you talk about conservation subdivisions in your presentation. If a subdivision must be a conservation subdivision, do we need the CEA? Because it's already being done. So I think that's a question that is, I think, relevant once we pass the new Housing Oversight Task Force zoning code that we're looking at. Last question and last observation is, I've looked at the NRI carefully. The map that you showed only showed the eastern portion of Woodstock. It didn't show the western portion of Woodstock. If you add the western portion of Woodstock to that map, you'll see that the most environmentally sensitive areas of Woodstock are in the western portion of Woodstock, not the eastern portion. They have forests that are in the top 1% of value as opposed to top 5% of value. So, and they have habitats that are 3 or 4 level deep of habitat in the western portion of town, whereas in the eastern portion of town, the northern section of the proposed CEA has actually 0 habitats, 0 critical habitats. The only critical habitats are in the southern part, and that's bat harvest or bat forest foraging, and a couple salamander things. One of which is salamander things already in protected land. So those are my questions and those are my observations. The other part of this I just want to really point out is that we're all in Woodstock because we love the environment. We're all here because we want to protect the environment. The question is how best to do that, while also allowing for people to use their land and people to be able to build housing that we need desperately too. And I think that's really the intention of the Housing Oversight Task Force that I'm a part of. And that's why I believe that should go first. And if that isn't adequate protection, doesn't adequately protect this kind of land, then yeah, maybe something else can be added after that.
Thank you, Jeff. Alex, I don't know if you got those down, but Ashley and I can listen to the meeting tape tomorrow and write those questions out on the paper.
Sure. I think we've also been in touch kind of privately as well. Jeff, I know Jeff has spoken to myself and a few of the other working group members, so we can certainly just keep that conversation going as well.
Excellent.
And I think when we post, I mean, hopefully if we are able to post this, the presentation, I think it answers a lot of the questions I'm hearing coming up, but I know when you listen to things, it can be difficult to follow along. So there might give people an opportunity to sit and read and get some of those answers as well.
Yeah, I'd like to just add one thing. I know, Alex, you did cover early in the presentation that the western part already has the DEP protecting it. And that answers one of Jeff's, I'm not going to answer all of Jeff's questions, but that answer came right to the tip of my tongue. Because as you said, the western part of our town has the DEP protections. And that was one of the reasons you mentioned that you focused on the eastern part, because the western part is protected already.
Okay. Jim Savino? Jim still on? Savio?
Hi, yes. Thank you very much for this presentation. Super informative. But my question's already been answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Marianne Haroon, did you have a question you wanted to ask? Or I know you typed something in the column, maybe it got answered? You're good? Okay. Judy Kerman. Judy, I know you spoke a minute before, you're good? Okay. Donnie, Judy?
The only thing I wanted to say, Bill, is that the kinds of oversight that the planning board has to take, we should take anyway. It's just a reminder to us to make sure that we do.
Okay. Donnie Todd, Donnie? You're muted, Don.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Thank you.
Start over again.
I wrote down something. Jeff did touch on the fact I'm a fifth generation member of this community also. I've hiked and traveled most of the area, and the area in Xena is not unique. I don't know where they came up. This actually, because we have a very extremely high water table, this exists all over this town. I grew up on Mead Mountain. We had swamps, quarry holes, and everything else on side of the mountain. It's not very unique. It's in Xena. So if you're going to do anything, you're going to have to do one thing for everybody. You know, to be fair. The water aquifer, the way we subdivide our property right now with very large parcels, and the aquifer will not be affected that much. It does not feed the town wells. The one on top side of Mead Mountain up on California Quarry does not do the one in Bearsville Flats. And there really has never been much of an issue with that. As far as scenic, if you can see more in the woods more than 20 feet, there's no scenery to be seen, quite honestly. In fact, that's one of our biggest problems we actually have in this area. We're not maintaining our forest. I made this complaint once before. We had a thing down here in Xena. But you mentioned all the recent ice storms we had and the power outages. That's because we're not cutting the trees. I'm in the fire service. I'm third generation life member with the fire department. I'm out there taping and blocking off roads because we're not maintaining the dead trees that are alongside the road, let alone doing a proper setback on the roads itself for all these power lines. There's your problem. There's one of the biggest problems when we had our storm. An ash tree that should have been taken down 10 years ago, they're just falling. Even on a calm day, they just fall over. And actually on Maury Hill Road, which is part of this district, One fell on top of a car while the lady was driving down the road and onto the power lines. The town has more of a responsibility than worrying about this little area here, which exists all over the Catskills. And you also mentioned about the flooding, how this will help the flooding. What will really help the flooding, the town works with the DEC and start cleaning up our streams. Log jams are prevalent all over the place. All they do is jam up culverts, flood our fields, flood out homes, and everything else. You people are not hands-on people, I understand that, but you have to take the information from the people who are doing the hands-on activities of the town, especially the volunteer firemen. We know what's going on. You sit, look at your computers, you look at these charts, and everything looks grandy. But I tell you what, you get out in the real world, it's different. We have a very high water table here. If you're in the fire department, you know every time it rains, what do, Bill? You can answer this. We pump cellars because every house with a basement has a sump pump in it. And that's the truth. And sometimes the houses can't even keep up with the water, so comes in so fast. So the reality of it is a very high water price. The other thing is what a great quality area this is for trees. It isn't. There's no dirt. Most of the trees, I live on the east side of Xena Road. Most of the trees have no dirt to support them. Every time I walk through my backyard on a windy day, I take my life in my hands. There's nothing to hold the tree up. There's no dirt. They don't grow on rock. They're growing on top of rocks, and maybe there's 6 or 8, maybe 10 inches of dirt sometimes. The trees just fall over. So it's not the great forest you think it is. You look at a picture, you look at this, oh, that's so great on a calm day. Go in the back on a windy day, on a stormy day, let me know how you make out. You better wear a hard hat, okay? And let somebody know you're going in because they're going to have to come looking for you. That's what I have to say. If you want to look at environmentally and keeping the people in town safer, maintain our streams. Let's get them cleaned up. Let's get the roads cut back so all the wires aren't destroyed every time the wind picks up 2 miles an hour. And while I'm at it, why don't we start enforcing the laws of cutting the trees back in driveways so we can actually get fire apparatus in these driveways. It's terrible. We have our smallest trucks sometimes are being damaged just trying to go in somebody's driveway to help them. These are your hazards. These are the environmental issues we should be addressing. You're looking out down the road 25 years, and I doubt I'll ever see it, or my grandson will ever see somebody building way here in the back. I really do. Okay. Where I am right now, yes, there's lots of beautiful trees. My mother was a little girl on this same property. It was clear cut. These are all open fields. So you have to look for the history to see how we got to the present. There's more forest in New York State than there has ever been in existence. Most of New York State during the 1718s and the 1900s were all clear cut. So we have a lot of forest now, but there's not enough support for that forest. We do have to cut trees down. We do have to manage them, let those smaller trees come in and grow and harvest the older trees so they can be properly for building materials and whatnot. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, the next name I have is Paul Josephson. Paul, want to make a comment?
I believe he sent a text. He had to sign off.
Oh, okay, he's not on anymore. Okay. If you just let him know that he can send more information or send an email or any questions he might have. Anybody else in the audience have any questions, comments?
Hi, I'm Julie Evans. I live in this area. I live on the corner of John Joy Road and Xena Sawkill. And I really appreciate hearing my neighbors talk about how they feel. It's nice to feel like there's a community here, because it's strange to have a CEA form that you know nothing about, as was having the Lineman Institute put behind my house at the Xena Elementary School. And I'm just wondering, as far as I know, I don't know if they did a seeker to do the Lineman Institute. And that's such a rich area for our Xena Haven here with the field and 26 acres of marsh behind the school. I'm just wondering, has that been a consideration? Is that part of what's kind of stirred this up, is seeing what was happening and how that was sort of turning the Xena area into a little bit more of an industrial area?
Judy, do you know, did the
Julie.
school come to the planning board?
I came to the planning board and I was there.
Did the school have an application before the planning board
The
as well?
school came to the planning board and we were very clear about where they could and could not do things.
Mhm.
Does it look like they're adhering to those requirements? Because they've changed a lot of the plans that I saw. But I'm just curious because there is so much wildlife there and there is so much fragility. I'm just wondering about all the trucking and the motors and the, for me as a homeowner, it's a nuisance, but it's also a great thing, I'm sure, for all the people that are going to use it. But there's headlights shining in my kitchen every morning at 5 o'clock, and it's a different environment. So I'm just wondering if the sensitivity of the CEA is also keeping an eye on things like that.
Well, I think if you've got that kind of a concern, somebody ought to address it. It's probably ought to be brought to the attention of the zoning inspector, that they're not observing. I don't remember what we put on the way of time, but we were satisfied that they were not going to be disruptive of the neighborhood. And if that's not turning out to be the case, then we need to deal with it.
Just come take a look, perhaps.
Julie, if you want to contact me, the supervisor, tomorrow, I can go take a look at the site plan as well. And if you want to call me later in the day, we can have a chat.
I just wondered if you were already keeping your eyes on it, because it sounds like you're keeping your eyes on the area. So just was seeing if that was in your lens. Thank you. I will do that. I'll reach out.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns?
Bill?
Bill, yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to get in on the chat. Couldn't figure that one out.
You and me both.
Technically challenged. Anyway, I'd like, you're worried about the wildlife and development and all this other stuff. I live almost adjacent to the Thorn Preserve on the other side of John Joy from the CEA, proposed CEA anyway. And since that Thorn Preserve has came into existence as a public entity for people to come and visit and stuff, which we thought was going to be great because it wasn't going to be developed. I'd sooner have it developed than the way it is now, because there's people there before it's supposed to open. It's supposed to go from sunrise to sunset. They're there before and they're there after. They're supposed to stay on the trail with their pets, their dogs, on a leash and clean up after themselves. You can go there any time of day and see people walking around, dogs off the leash. Nobody walks around with anything in their hand, so they're not picking up off their animals. Since the 6 years or so that it's been open, I've seen a decline in the wildlife out there. I live in the woods. I've got this fern field where the fawns would come. There'd be 12, 14 fawns every year. And every year they declined. Last year I was down to 2 fawns. I know we had a blood disease, but that was going on before that blood disease last year with the adult deer. There needs to be enforcement for these areas. There has to be somebody coming in enforcing them. Get on the leash, stay on the trail, clean up after your pet. Not only there, the other side of the CEA over onto Lake State Park there. The same thing. The dogs run wild. Nobody's picking up after themselves. They're in there all hours. Go up to the rail trail. It's nice to have all these public access. Nice to have all of these tourists coming in. Not, because they don't appreciate what they have. They don't take care of it. And there's nobody keeping after them. So getting more restrictions and trying to get more people coming over here saying, oh, look at our beauty. Again, like they said before, it's private property. It's not the recreation, but take care of what we have. Enforce that. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Bill. I'll pass your concerns along to the Land Conservancy as well.
I've talked to them. I had my neighbor who lives next to them cutting trees on their property, making trails, and I told them for a year. I talked to them. Maxanne, whatever her name was. Finally, the guy John came out and they put these little stickers, but nobody said, okay, buddy, you cut these trees up and you stacked them and you cleaned up all the ground cover. You should put them back. Nobody said that to him. It's all left open, like it's Central Park, and that affects the wildlife, So, like I said, enforce and take care of what we have, and we're going to be in good shape, not more restrictions.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Anyone else?
I'd like to make a comment before we close.
Okay, I want to stick with the public for 1 minute. If there's no one going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, Laura.
Well, I think this was an excellent communication session. I think it was excellent that we have the property owners. I know Bill and I think others had reached out to make sure the property owners in the CEA area were aware of this. It was, I think, an excellent communication session. And I know, Bill, you're asking people to get you their lists of comments, people that made comments on here. You've asked them to send them in writing to you. And Alex, I'm sure you'll be working together on those things. So I'm very glad that we had this session, this communication session, because it'll give people a chance to get used to the idea, get some answers to some questions people brought up. And so I think it moves us along the path, which I think is a healthy thing. And great that all the property owners in the CEA had an opportunity to come here, hear the whole message, and then share concerns. So it's part of the journey.
Okay. Any other board members?
Just wondering quickly, Bill.
Go ahead, Reggie.
Sorry. Just wondering, so for the other, because I imagine, are all the homeowners on this call this evening, or?
Oh, no.
We have no. So I'm just curious about hearing from more of them. I feel like that was really great hearing from people that live on that property. I know that Alex, I know you mentioned you're going to continue, you have an open door as far as them reaching out, but will we encourage, Bill, folks to reach out to the board? The homeowners themselves to reach out, or is there going to be some way to capture?
Yes, and let me ask, because we've got 1, 2, 3, at least 4 Xena firemen. Do you and property owners down there, would it be beneficial to have maybe a public meeting down at the firehouse and advertise that as well?
Yes.
It'll be similar to what we did, but it'll be face to face, and it could be a WEC meeting down there. So Alex, would that be something you'd be comfortable doing?
Yeah, sounds fun.
So why don't we find a date in April, and we can let folks know and advertise again. And in the meantime, Alex, if you or somebody from the WEC could maybe sit down with a couple of planning board members, or maybe both boards could meet. What I'd really like to have a clear understanding is, let's say that Jeff's got his 30 acres, or, and it gets to the process, what would that possibly look like? And just kind of, talk it through so that we have an understanding of, here are the drawbacks, here are the positives.
Yeah, I think Jeff Collins had asked about that a few days ago, but prior to this, and we talked through it. It wasn't enough time to come up with sort of a hypothetical example for you guys. So it's something that we can provide going forward, but we weren't able to do it by, today, because and thank you so much to Gretchen and to Ingrid, who have been working so hard on this with us. They're doing a number of other things as well. So we're like bombarding them with all of our requests, and they have to do their other work as well. So we're working on putting something together that would show like exactly how the process would work. It doesn't exist at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So going forward, I know we have a lot of opportunities to talk about this going forward. And to Julie, I think Julie, I loved what you said about having everyone, it's like a neighbor community, because we don't get a lot of opportunities to do this. And we have a sort of a small outreach that we have with our WEC page and social media and stuff. But our meetings are always open to the public. It's part of the rules of the meetings. They're on the first and third Wednesdays of every month. And we welcome anyone to come about this, about anything else. If you have environmental concerns, if you want to show up, if you want to send an email, if you want to reach out, we're really here to help serve the community. So whatever you want to ask to us, also please feel free, because that informs a lot of the projects we take on. It's what we hear from the folks around us.
Actually, Alex, maybe just to set a timetable, maybe what you could do over the next couple of weeks and into April, work with the planning board to come up with scenarios of what a project and a seeker for a project might look like. And let's in May then schedule a meeting, neighbor meeting down in the firehouse, and with the idea of a public hearing in June. Okay, so Bill or Don, who would be the best contact for Alex to set up?
Me.
Bill, okay, I have your phone number. I'll give it to her. I'll dig that out and give it to her tomorrow.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
You have a hand up. You have a hand up, Vicky Crowley.
Vicky.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I think a lot of the Xena community was totally unaware of what was happening. And I think a big effort needs to be put into making people aware of this upcoming meeting at the firehouse. I know that Xena Recreation Park our land is included in this. And we have many members who are member owners. And I'm not sure that any of those people are aware, other than the board. I know the board is aware, and they have great concerns about the Xena Rec property.
Actually, Vicky, I'll leave it to you and Bill and Don to kind of bat around, because that would be another good location to have a meeting in May. And actually, we're kind of back in the woods there. So I don't know if you guys would be up for it, but either location would be pretty nice.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the firehouse would be fine.
Okay.
Xena Rec doesn't really open until the summer season.
Okay.
But I guess my point is there are many, we're member owners. Everybody that's a member is a bondholder at Xena Rec and has a stake in what's happening.
Well, and I think some of the concerns that Jeff Collins raised with regard to expansion or doing something potentially apply to you guys there.
Certainly.
So I'm also going to rely upon all you guys from Company 4, once we get a date for the meeting set, to really just talk with all your neighbors and get as many people interested and involved and out to ask questions as possible. I'm not going to, one of my concerns, and one of the reasons that I asked Alex to put this off a little bit, is that, we're looking at a housing crisis, a shortage. And my concern was that if, we adopted this right off the bat and 3 months from now came up with housing ideas, that some people might misunderstand that, oh no, it's a CEA, you can't build. And in fact, I've already had that argument on Facebook with someone. So, I see that there's potential for these two things to go hand in hand. And that's why I've asked, and Alex was agreeable to, kind of holding off until June, when we can bring these initiatives out together and, really let people realize that they do go hand in hand. So with that, anyone else?
Just quickly, I see Jeff asking in the comments,
and Mary-Ann.
Jeff asking if we can get a list of all the affected landowners so they could be contacted.
I do have somewhat of a list here, yes. And Alex, I think, where'd you go? Oh, there you are. I think you have somewhat of a list. So maybe we could get together later this week and combine the lists and take a look. So
Bill,
yes.
Bill, I can generate that list in about.
Do it then. Good. Get it whenever you have it. Get it to us. Thank you, Judy. Mary-Ann.
Bill,
Yep.
I think you should be having a more direct reach out to the larger property owners, since it affects them the most.
I've personally called each one of them.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And if the questions raised by the two Jeffs, I think they're very relevant. If those used as specific examples can be answered in the next meeting. So it's because it's feeling a little bit vague to me tonight. And I think it's another chance. The next meeting is another chance to move this forward with the blessing of the Xena community.
Right. And with an understanding of what we're talking about here. I agree. And I think this is a good start, and we can work on getting those questions answered. So. All right, folks, if there's no more comments, I'm going to move for adjournment.
Well, did we have a topic we were going to talk about, Bill?
What was that?
We're going to talk about trees at all? We talked this afternoon about talking about trees, Phil, but there's nothing on the CEA, but I think we talked about talking about trees at this call.
We talked about putting it on a meeting, yes.
Oh, okay.
I don't have it on the agenda for tonight.
Okay. Okay, so it'd probably be a week from tonight, probably?
We can put it on the agenda for next Tuesday. You're talking about the tree law with regard to cutting in Bearsville.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we can put that on. As you and I talked earlier today, I'm happy to put that on. And I had asked Bennett, to, as liaison to the tree committee. Oh, there you are, Bennett. There's so many boxes here, I can't keep track. Because I do have a little concern about some ambiguity in the law. And, it's pretty clear to me, but if I was not as familiar with the law, I could see how there would be issues with whether dead trees need permits or they don't need permits. There is a waiver system, but it also says that we're not protecting them. So I think that's something we should talk about next week as well. And, maybe wanting to tighten that up a little bit or clarify it. So
I think a lot of people would welcome that.
Okay. Done. All right, move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Excuse me?
Aye. Good night, folks. Nice meeting. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you.
Thank you.